Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the UX Design MasterTrack Certificate Informational section. I'm going to go on to the next slide here. Oops. Okay. Just housekeeping items. Feel free to use the chat function for questions, general conversations. You can also post your questions in the Q&A window, and we will cover all the questions at the end. Again, just a reminder, this webinar will be recorded and the link will be ready in the follow-up email. Okay, so we're going to start with introduction, and each of us is going to give a brief introduction of ourselves, and I'm going to start. My name is Sue Chu, and I am the Associate Dean for Academic Programs and Faculty Affairs at the College of Design at the University of Minnesota. I am also a professor in graphic design. So now I'm going to turn to my colleague, Dr. Brad Hokanson.
I'm Brad Hokanson. I'm a faculty member in graphic design. I'm a professor in graphic design. And I started my career as an architect at the University of Minnesota, and I've come back here and I'm teaching in graphic design. I also teach classes on creativity, and I'm the person that teaches the course on visual literacy. I'm going to pass it along to Deborah, because I know she's got a major aspect in terms of what we teach in the course.
Hello all, nice to meet you. So I'm Deb Lawton, and I am also a professor or teacher in graphic design, and I've been teaching in the field of graphic design since 2001, specifically teaching at the University of Minnesota since 2013. And I will be leading what we call UX1 and UX2, which is another name for them are UX testing and UX research. So Frances.
Hi, everyone. I'm Frances Trice, and I am a faculty member and also the program director for the graphic design program. And I will be teaching the 1-credit ethics and research course. And I welcome you all to this seminar. It's great to see so many people.
And hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name is Xinran. I'm a PhD student in the Learning Technologies program at the University of Minnesota, and I'm helping with the program in the course design and handling some administrative questions. So you might see me more later if you enroll in this course.
Thank you, everybody. I saw a message that a couple attendees raised hand. And I can't see from my screen, but I would recommend that if you have any questions, please do put it in the chat or the Q&A so that we'll be able to attend to those questions later. Okay, so let me go forward here. So the structure of our webinar. So we're going to talk about the program structure first, and then we're going to go into to introduce the 4 courses that are covered under this certificate more in depth. And we're going to show the program timeline and also have some Q&A that perhaps some of you already have some of those questions, but that we'll try to provide some answers there. Okay, so the program is offered by the University of Minnesota, which is located in the state of Minnesota in the US. We are one of the largest research universities in the US. We provide opportunities for working professionals and learners to apply the user experience design for your chosen field or interests. So the goal of this program is not necessarily for a learner coming from a design background. Our goal is really to help learners to learn about UX design so that you can apply that in your chosen field of expertise. The certificate is what we call the MasterTrack certificate. Is that one of the reasons for the major reason is that if after finishing the certificate and if you are admitted to the U of M Master of Science in Human Factors or in the graphic design track design graduate program, the credit that you earned from the certificate will count toward your graduate program. As I said, actually before the webinar, people have some questions. The certificate itself has 10 credits. That means that the 10 credits will count toward the master degree. And a normal master degree requires about 30 to 34 credits. So basically, students will complete 1/3 of the requirement already if they enter our master program and they already completed the UX certificate. So that's what the MasterTrack certificate is about. It's a stackable credits, and to some learners, it is a very attractive options. And actually, we currently have some students who are in our master program at the U of M that they completed the MasterTrack certificate already. Okay, here are, I'm not going to read through all of these testimonials from our learners. They are available, I believe, at the Coursera website that you can read them through if you like. And I can go through that, you know, from the first learners is what she gained, I think, is that important is that she created a portfolio based on the work that she learned from the MasterTrack certificate, and use a portfolio to apply a master program at her home country. And again, I believe it's one of the top universities at her home country. For another learner, is really about learning the skills that she learned from the UX MasterTrack, be able to apply to her new profession. And she think that, you know, I really like the last sentence. I was learning in these courses within hours of picking up the design skills, which has been so valuable for my professional development. So again, you know, all these are available at the Coursera website. Hopefully you have time to go to the website and read them through. Okay, so the next one is about our courses. The components of our courses and all of the classes, if I may say, is that they are, of course, have the asynchronous activities such as discussions, Slack, and also have synchronous meetings. And that means that you will have the opportunity to participate in live section with the faculty and have the direct interaction for discussion and questions and guest critique, etc. And how we schedule the synchronous meetings, I will let the faculty talk about it. By my understanding is that, of course, we'll accommodate as many learners as possible in terms of the time zone difference. So those are, you know, that's the key thing that we try to make sure that we accommodate that. And so again, you know, we have synchronous meetings, asynchronous activities. There will be hands-on projects that you'll be able to create some kind of prototyping or projects that you could use for your portfolio. And there will be guest speakers from the industry to help for the critique, Q&A, lecture, and feedback. As I said earlier, this certificate includes 10 graduate level university credits, and there are 4 classes. Ethics and Research is a 1-credit course. UX1, User Research for User Experience, is a 3-credit course. And then User Testing for User Experience Design, which is a UX2, is also a 3-credit course. And Visual Literacy is a 3-credit course. And the structure of our certificate, as when we're going to go over the timeline later, they're basically 2 terms. And UX1 and UX2 are in sequence. So you have to finish UX1 before you enter into UX2. So that's the only sequence courses. And that's why we have 2 terms for our courses as well. Okay, now I'm going to pass this to Fancy here to talk about the research ethics course.
All right. Again, welcome everyone. I wanted to give you a little bit of background about what you could expect out of the ethics and research course. It is a 1-credit course that requires about 4 to 6 hours per week. And as you imagine, ethics is a really broad topic, especially as it relates to research. So what you can expect in our time together, we'll focus on readings, interactive discussion boards. As Sue mentioned, we'll have a couple of live sessions with industry experts to build awareness of the subject of ethics and research. In the class, we use the overarching ethical principles such as responsibility, respect, and honesty as a basic framework. And then we also talk about accessibility as a 4th general consideration. And this will be touched on by one of our guest speakers. So again, these are very broad principles. So beginning in week 3, we see how each are applied to very specific case studies, and especially as they're related to UX in some way. We begin with a selection of historic case studies, such as the Tuskegee syphilis trials, which began actually in 1932 and didn't wrap up until 40 years later. We talk about Milgram obedience trials from the 1970s, 60s, and then we talk about a number of prominent 20th century studies as well as 21st century studies involving human subjects. And so we look at these historic case studies as kind of a background, a primary reason why we need to employ ethics in research. They're the reason that we have strict ethical considerations in research today. Then we transition to how human subjects or users are sometimes involved knowingly and a lot of times unknowingly in big tech studies, so big technology studies. And I'm sure you guys all recall these continuing news reports of big tech companies like Facebook and how they have violated privacy issues around their users to their benefit. So readings include the Little Book of Design Research Ethics, which is a free download. It was created by a global design firm out of San Francisco called IDEO. And we'll also be looking at selections from a collection of recent essays from a book titled Ethics in Design and Communication. And these are often paired with relevant free online resources such as information from the Pew Research Center, which is very prominent here in the US and worldwide, and also the Center for Human Technology, which was started based on all the abuse of social media that they put onto users. It's a really wonderful class because course participants, like all of you, bring a wealth of information and educational and professional information to the active discussion threads. And then at the end, we do a final project. We have a couple of different options for the final project, which will hopefully be tooled for you to apply them directly to wherever you are now or wherever you want to be after you finish the certificate. So with that, I will turn it over to Deb. Thank you.
Hello all again. So I will be guiding you through the UX1 and UX2 courses. And the way that these courses kind of work together is they build off of each other. So in UX1, we're really going to be focusing on the process of UX. And in discovering that process, we will work through different methods and we'll examine different principles of UX design. We'll really focus on the who and the why in the UX1 and kind of hone in on what that need is. And then with UX2, we'll work on the how. So if we could go to the next slide. So the process of what this is going to kind of look like is we're going to spend a lot of time in the empathizing, defining, and ideation stage in which we will use research methods to back up that information, focusing more on qualitative research in the second session and a little bit of quantitative research in the first session. The amount of time that we have together isn't enough time to fully execute every part of this, but what it will give you is a toolbox of information so that you can take that information and apply it in the future. We will be getting through this entire process. We'll just be doing it in short little runs. So for instance, if we are doing a survey or trying to get some quantitative data back, it will be a very limited short amount of time, where in reality, if you were doing UX, you might spend more time on that research phase. So next slide, please. Okay, so then here is the next 4 slides are examples of what students have turned in. So this is one specific student's work. And what they do the entire time is kind of document the variety of steps that we're going through. So we have step 1, discovery. So we're looking at competitive analysis. We're looking at spheres of influence, researching the products that already exist and where there's problems or holes or gaps. And we try to kind of figure out what the next step will be. And in this course, you're doing the research. In UX1, you're doing the research for this. And then in UX2, you're going to end up developing an app. So this is the step 1 of discovering the competitors. And then the next step here, we have step 2. That's fine. You can forward that. Step 2 will kind of define. So what is, how will the product be used and what are the different user flows that that product needs to develop? So again, in this class, we won't develop a fully functioning app, but we'll develop pieces of that. So here there's 4 different flows that this person chose to work through. And these flows are based off of research. So this research is kind of leading us to this step 2. Then step 3, if you could go to the next slide, please. Where we'll take that flow and we'll develop a concrete wireframe. So what is that? What are the UI elements? What are the visual aspects to move from point A to point B in the flow of an app? And in the end, we will be developing an app, most students. There have been opportunities where people have chosen to design a website or even more of a workflow through a desktop app. So there's different options for you, but we focus more on app development just because it actually is easier to get through all of the steps that we're trying to get through. Then step 4, we will prototype and test. I recommend using Figma, but it's open to using other software if that's something that you're familiar with. And if you're not familiar with anything, this class helps you kind of educate yourself on these prototyping tools. So Figma is the one that we use because it is free and accessible to all, but you need no prior knowledge in order to do this. And then this last slide that I have here is an actual little clickable prototype that you will end with. And so in order to get to this phase, we will work through, like I said, a toolbox. That toolbox we'll be developing personas, we'll be doing card sorting, empathy mapping. We will work on competitive analysis, like I showed, storyboards, journeys, heuristic evaluations. So those are some of the tools that go into the development of what you're seeing in front of you now, which is this clickable prototype, which is what we will end with in UX2. And the entire time we'll be doing an iterative process in which you will test, rework, test, rework. So nothing is really a straightforward line, and it is very independent upon what you're working on. So I hope that makes sense on kind of what UX1 and UX2 will be covering. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention is we will have a book that we focus on, and that book is Think Like a UX Researcher, and that will be the area in which we kind of look at the way that the industry is kind of viewing some of the principles and methods that we'll be talking about in our class.
I'm Brad Hokinson, and I'm the person that's teaching the visual literacy course. In the sequence, it's offered the second half of the sequence, and most of us have some skill in terms of visual literacy. We see things all around the world, but on the other hand, research says that we often don't see everything that's there. They often say that we perceive 90 to 95%, we miss 90 to 95% of what's there. We're concentrated on the things that we're really looking for. And so part of the class, which leads into user experience design, is how do we represent what we see and how do we see better? And so a lot of it is about noticing, a lot of it is about investigating, and a lot about us moving forward. Here's a couple examples of some work that was done in the class this past couple terms. First, I had people diagram exactly what they did in terms of their own experience at a dining room table or at a joint dinner or something like that. That's the image down there on the left at the hexagon table. And how do you represent who talks to whom, who's present at the table, who's commanding the conversation, and how can you represent those things? The drawing on the right illustrates what's going on around your block, because that's an easy place to look in terms of seeing more about what's going on in the world. What you see more, you're going to be able to present more and understand what's shown in any user experience that you're developing or looking at. So this is someone's block, and where the cars were, where the people were, where they knew what was going on, and where was kind of something they couldn't figure out what's happening in the block. Those are some examples in the class. We're using a book called Visual Intelligence, and it's by Amy Herman. I'll hold it up here so you can sort of see it. It's a moderately expensive book. Well, it's only like $11, but it's very worthwhile to read, and you can get it online very easily. So I'd recommend it highly, and that's what previous students in the class have said. So I'll pass it back to you, Sue, and that's all I need to say about my class for now.
Hi, Brad. Would you like to continue the program timeline?
Oh, sure.
Yep.
usually what happens is we have 2 7-week sections of classes. So for 2 classes at a time. It's the only 2 classes we offered at that time. And the first 7 weeks of the term in the first cohort for next year is on ethics and research and UX 1. And that's the UX research class going from January 24th to March 13th. We take a 2-week break because everybody needs a break, both you students and us faculty members. In the second half, we do the UX 2 course and my visual literacy course. They run from about the end of May to about the end of March to the middle of May. By the way, I also do have to mention that I tend to have my sessions on Saturday mornings. We have a couple live sessions where we do some extra exercises that we do with other people in the class, as opposed to just doing things by discussion and drawing. So we do have a summer break. Next fall, we'll be offering the same set of classes repeated again. So if you decide not to enter this term, or if something else gets in the way, you can always take that next step in terms of rejoining us in terms of next fall.
And there's also like a 2-week break in between the 2 terms for grading purpose, and also everybody have a chance to refresh and before they enter for the second term. Yeah.
I should mention as well, sorry, since we're talking about schedule, that I do live sessions as well. Typically we schedule them week 2, 5, and 7 of both my UX 1 and UX 2, but I also will do one-on-one office hours that might be more fitting for students that couldn't meet the time period of the live session. So it's really open to kind of the one-on-one. If you need something, I'm there for you to kind of connect with outside of our live sessions as well.
Thanks, Deborah. Fancy, would you like to add anything about the research ethics course then?
Yes, so just like Deb said, we do have live sessions, and so we don't offer them at the same time. So you have an opportunity to, take one weekly. We also record them in case you can't make them, because you're all coming from different time zones, it looks like. And so in addition, I do have optional office hours Thursday mornings. And then if you need to meet with me otherwise at a different time, I'm very flexible. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so this is some of the questions that we gathered based on our last year experience with the learners who entered the program. And so hopefully we'll address some of the questions that you might have. So what is the certificate earned at the end? For any learner who completed the certificate, you will be provided a PDF certificate issued by the College of Design at the University of Minnesota. Some learners have questioned about GRE requirement. Is basically a exam that for students who are interested to enter into graduate program. This is a MasterTrack certificate, and there is no GRE requirement, but there might be a GRE requirement when you apply for the graduate admission to the 2 programs that we mentioned earlier, the Human Factors and Graphic Design. A question about requirement in English proficiency. As you know, we do not have like TOEFL requirement for students need to take this certificate, but we do think it is important to contact the faculty and let us know how we can help. In terms of like, if you think that you may need more assistance in terms of understanding the assignment or completing the assignment, so do feel free to reach out to the faculty. Where can I ask specific questions about the program? And you may want to jot down this email, uxresearch@umn.edu. So how long does it take to complete the certificate? From the, as you saw from the previous slide, there are 2 terms, 7 weeks per terms, and 14 weeks in total. And again, we have a 2-week breaks in between the 2 terms. The cost for the certificate is $3,000 for the whole certificate, and there is option to pay the tuition breakdown into 4 installments. So you can, I think it's $750 each time. Currently, there's no financial aid or scholarship available from the U of M or Coursera for the MasterTrack. And of course, you're encouraged to seek opportunities from outside the institutions or other opportunities. If you're working in a firm or company, perhaps you can, and some companies do provide a professional development opportunity for their employees. So it would be something that you could talk to your supervisor, hopefully. Let's see here. Again, I know we probably have some questions in the chat. I haven't had a chance to check. And you can post your question in the Q&A window. But just one last thing for the slide before we get onto the Q&A. Again, any questions, please do email uxresearch@umn.edu. If for enrollment registration, the process has to go through Coursera. So here's the link to the MasterTrack UX certificate. And one thing that we would like to point out is that after enrollment, there is what they call the onboarding course for you as a program orientation. It is not like a graded orientation or anything. It's something that relate to like grading policy, attendance policy, things like that, that we would like learners to go through before they take the classes. Completion of the onboarding course is required to enroll in other courses. So what happens is this: if you don't complete the onboarding course, you will not be able to enroll in any of the classes in the MasterTrack, even though you paid the tuition already. So you have to make sure that you finish the onboarding course, and then on your dashboard in the Coursera interface, the classes that you need to register will appear on your dashboard. So you want to make sure you finish the onboarding course before the term starts. So please do so as soon as possible when you register, after you register the MasterTrack. Okay, so I think this is the last slide, and I will open up for question. And if so, okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, that's better. So Siwan, or I know we talk about, perhaps we could look at, is there any questions that we need to answer as a group, or?
Yeah, there are some questions in the Q&A session. I tapped the answers.
Oh,
so
thank
hopefully
you.
that makes sense. Yeah, if you still have any other questions, feel free to post them in the chat.
There's something about Vanessa, the last one. I'm loving this. Hi from Nigeria. Good to hear.
I think if anyone would like to speak, to ask questions, we can do that too. You can raise your hand and then you can speak.
I'd like to just add a note to one of the questions, and I did actually reply to it in the question and answer area, but I just want to kind of talk through that a little bit, is that although this isn't a class that you work at your own pace, meaning between those weeks 1 and 7, we want you to try to accomplish the assignments and the videos in order and on time. The time frame that you do it within that week is really up to you. So let's say that I have a live session on a Friday that you can't make, but maybe you do all of your homework on Saturday, that would be fine. So it is, although it's not work at your own pace, there's part of it that kind of is work at your own pace, meaning you can access the materials when you have the time each week. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I wanted to add a little something about, the value of the live sessions. Of course, they're recorded, but then you miss your opportunity to perhaps ask questions. We do have a Slack account that we can communicate, with you. And in that Slack, I do encourage people to post questions before any live session, just in case they can't attend, but you just get a very different kind of interaction when you can attend with the people that you are in class with. It's really exciting, especially since you're all coming from different places around the world, and design is very different globally. So we learn a lot from each other. So I hope that you can attend the live sessions when you enroll.
I think the other thing that stresses is that a lot of learning happens in the class based on the fact that there are other people commenting on your work. Sorry, and I think it's worthwhile to make sure you participate in discussion. Okay. It's just when the mic's on. I'm going to have to get rid of this dog here and work from there. So I'll be back in a second.
Sounds good. Thanks, Bert. There's a question actually in the Q&A ask about the deadline for each section. So the first cohort, the first section start January 24th. You know, in the past, and this is something that I would like to discuss actually. In the past, we do have students join maybe a week later after the session started, and this is absolutely not necessary that we would like, because sometimes when you join, because it's already like a 7 weeks, it's not a long session, and if you join later, you do have to spend time to catch up with the materials. Saying that doesn't mean that you can't. I just want to just be clear. Just for your own benefit, you know, if you can make the commitment that you can join like the first cohort January 24th, the first day of the class, that would be perfect. The second cohort doesn't start until August 15th. So we're offering 2 cohorts per year. And so if you're not so sure that if you would like to do, you know, in January, like the earlier the earlier months of the year, you can, you know, think about maybe you can join later on, like in August. But I strongly encourage that if you are thinking about, you know, registering for the certificate, again, you know, if you could try to finish the onboarding course before the beginning of the section, and then we'll join the section, as we plan to have, you know, the first day of the class will be January 24th. So
I just wanted to touch a little bit more about kind of that flexibility within, you know, from week to week. There definitely is flexibility from week to week, but for my class in particular, and I imagine for the others, if you can keep up with the discussions, because you're receiving and also contributing to other people's discussions. So for instance, if you're late with the weekly discussion, then you're not going to get that really valuable feedback that other people provide for you. And that's really, really part of what makes it so interactive and so interesting, you know. So I just wanted to point that out as well. Thanks.
Hey, Deb, would you like to answer the question? Actually, it's in the chat that start with the, let's see here. Can we use the Figma student version while enrolled in the course?
Yes, I can answer both of those. And
okay.
So Figma, I believe there's now a paid version, but we always have what we need for the class is through the free version. So it's not even technically a student version, or they may have worded it recently, but we'll be using the free version of Figma so that everybody has access to it. And then it says, how many hours do you recommend students spend on learning per week? It is possible to do with a full-time job, and it really is up to you, at least for my course. There is specific things that need to get done, but the depth in which you do them is really kind of up to you and how much time you have to investigate it. So I kind of I took a survey from my students, and I had students work from anywhere from 4 to 10 hours a week on their projects. And I would say that, you know, the lowest is probably 3 or 4 hours, at least in my class. And then at the same time, you'll be taking Fancy or Brad's classes as well. Okay, I think I answered those 2 questions.
There's a question about internship or, you know, internship opportunity for the summertime with this course. One thing I would like to point out though, and again, of course, depends on your location and everything else. And I think we do have guest speakers from the industry to visit the class. And then that's the time that I do think it's a good time to make connection. And our faculty are very generous. I mean, Fancy and Deb and Brad here, they're very generous, helping students in terms of like connect with the industries that the people we have networked with, how about, you know, and so, you know, it might be individual based and it might be individual different kind of requests, but I do think that, you know, I think we are open to help you to be successful. I think that's our goal, right? We want you to be successful after complete, you know, with this certificate for professional growth, for things that you may want to pursue in the future, a master degree. You know, everybody have different kind of goal in, you know, what you would like to do, but we certainly, I think our goal here is just for everyone here. So we want everybody participate in this certificate to be a successful learner, to complete the certificate and be able to apply the skills that you learn from this certificate so that you can apply to different kind of, you know, situations, work related, or even your daily life. You know, there's a lot of problem solving through these kind of courses. And I hope that will be, that you'll be able to find it helpful from that perspective as well.
I mean, for example, after you complete the certificate, or maybe you complete Deb's courses, maybe you want a second set of eyes to kind of look over what you've produced, with fresh eyes, and we're happy to do that. So that's really important to, kind of fine tune your portfolio after you've completed the certificate. And we're here to give you that second set of eyes to look over your materials.
So there's a question how I can start in UX. Deb, you want? Okay, thank you.
I think that this certificate is a great place to start. We start at the very beginning, so it can be a very beginner level course. I also have had students that have already been working in UX that have gained valuable knowledge by taking this course. So it's an array of people, but this is a great way to start because it introduces you to everything. And then I look at this class as that starting point, or as kind of building knowledge, but the way that UX works, or most fields, is it's never ending learning, right? So this is a beginner way to kind of like dip your toes in and see if you actually are liking it. And then for those that are a little bit more advanced, it actually just will build on some of the skills that you might already know. I had a student in our first session that was a UX designer, and when she took the course, she actually got more depth on the tools that she was already using and didn't really understand kind of why she was using them. And so it helped her evolve her UX practice even further. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, Deb, you also mentioned that students in the class they might not be doing specific UX design on like an app or something like that. They might be working on like a website or something. And it seems like the design process you take them through really goes into other fields as well. If they're a graphic designer, it would help them do better graphic design, even if they're doing stuff on paper.
Right. I had a student, again, last class, that decided that her main objective was going to be to design a workshop for her colleagues so that they could have a better workflow. She worked for the government, so it was passing laws and how that kind of bill got passed through the people that needed to edit it. And there was a kind of a service chain that just wasn't working. So she took the principles and the ideas of this course and decided that that would be her final project and her prototype. The thing that she ended up prototyping was the concept of a workshop. So yes, it definitely can cross all sectors of people's lives and work areas.
Thank you. So there's a question in the chat about how many projects will be completing in total. Maybe each of you can talk about for your course, how many projects are there so that we can add them up.
I can go. So again, I have the 1 credit course. So it's the kind of smallest time requirement. So we have, so weeks 1 through 6, we have weekly discussions and weekly reflections. And then starting in week 3, you're going to choose an option for your final project, which is a project that kind of helps you to kind of reflect on what you think were the most important aspects of ethics as they apply to design. And then you start to pull together, some reasons to support that and think about it more deeply. You can think about it more deeply in terms of what your current job is. Perhaps you are working in a design field right now, or you can think about how it might apply later if you are trying to find a position in a design firm. And so basically, I'm trying to help you apply some of those ethical principles that we talk about weeks 1 through 6 into a more comprehensive reflection in week 7.
Deborah or Brad?
I'll talk about mine a little bit. We have a series of projects in terms of getting people to go out and look around where they are right now, trying to examine the sort of visual interface that they have with the world. Right now, everybody gathers visual information, and that all helps in terms of what somebody's doing. So we have about 5 projects in the class. Most of them are not really design oriented, but you saw a couple of them. They're basic sketches in terms of how you describe what's going on in your world.
Sorry.
Okay, I wanted to go back a little bit, to the the question before this last one. I recall, several people in the certificate program where they were already working in maybe say print design, and they wanted to get a better understanding if UX design would be a good way to transition in their career. So this is also a really excellent way to kind of figure that out.
Thanks.
And then, yeah,
Go ahead.
I was going to talk about the projects in my class. It's a little bit difficult, but in the end, you'll end up with one product that you end up making. But up until that point, you'll be doing a lot of assignments that are really valuable for a portfolio, such as user journeys, empathy mapping, card sorting. So the sort of details needed behind a good UX process will be explored through your assignments, and then they'll be documented. And so in the end, we are creating an entire case study that goes from the research and inquiry and design thinking through the stages of qualitative and quantitative research, documenting that through think out loud testing, card sorting testing, and others that I can't pull off the top of my head. But all of those little assignments kind of lead up to one large case study that documents good UX practice and process, with the end product being a clickable prototype.
I think you answered part of the question that one of the questions posed here is that are you going to go over creating portfolio? I think along the way that at the same time, you're addressing how you can make a portfolio as well. I think from all of your classes here, yeah. Okay, all right. There's a question about, and I'm not exactly sure if I have a question about like if someone is not ready to take into the master program. I'm not exactly sure, is it the master certificate you're referring to, or that after you complete the certificate, that not necessarily that you have the finance or anything to apply for the master degree on campus. So I'm going to answer it. Keep this in mind, the certificate credits, they don't expire. So let's say you finish the certificate, and at this point you have no interest to say, I don't need to, I have no interest to apply to a master degree. Things change, right? I mean, everybody in their life, in terms of like where you're at, how you would like to pursue a higher degree or not, that might change. And so just keep that in mind, the certificate credits, they don't expire. So 10 years from now, you say, you know what, I'm ready. I would love to come to the U of M and take the master degree in graphic design. Yes, your 10 credits that you completed in the certificate will count toward the degree. And so we want to make sure that in terms of the transition is smooth, and that, again, recognizing that everybody at the different stage of their life and preparation is different. So I hope I addressed your question. There's a question about financial aid. At this point, we do not have financial aid from the U or from Coursera. There's another question about, and I think Deborah, you answered that already, using the Adobe Suite like Illustrator or Photoshop. Let's see. So
there's another question in Q&A about, does the certificate help with the human factors PhD program?
Deb, you want to say something? Or?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, or kind of half answer that question, and you could follow up. All of the techniques that we use in my courses, I think, help with the concept of human factors and understanding some of the processes needed to move that forward. So I think no matter what, it could help you if that's what you meant. Does the certificate help with human factors and ergonomics PhD program? The techniques and methods we use definitely will help in further your education. But Sue, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
So technically, in terms of the question that you have, is that can the certificate apply to the PhD program? Because we say at this point is the master. Again, that would be something that I would certainly happy to follow up with. If whoever is asking this question and complete the certificate and apply to the program and see how those classes can be transferred to the PhD. That is a great question, because if I could get into more details here, is that for human factors and the graphic design graduate the PhD degree. So for graphic design, you do need a master before you can apply for the PhD. And then for human factors, students actually can go from finishing up the bachelor degree and apply to the PhD. And that's the difference between the admission of the two. And at this point, like I said earlier, is that the credits completed for this MasterTrack will, is transferable, stackable to the master degree on both human factors and graphic design. But again, like whoever, that I'll be happy to follow up with that in terms of helping the situation in terms of if we can get those credits into the PhD credit requirement for human factors. And first, so somebody has a question here. So it's kind of, what happens if somebody changed their careers and first started with the foundation of Google UX design certificate and later wants to get into the master with this previous certificate?
So I was thinking that one of the things that happens is that what happens with the Google certificate is that it's substantially different than ours. And the agreement we have is with our own. I'm the director of graduate studies in design. Probably that would not necessarily count to get into our master's program in terms of actually taking credits off, in terms of the credits you need to gain. The real opportunity, I think, is with our UX certificate, is that you actually be able to do the credits before you come to campus. So that helps a lot, both in all sorts of ways in terms of cost and in terms of your own expenses. But their certificate is a good certificate as well. It's just not connected directly to our graduate program.
Thanks, Brad.
There is another question in Q&A. When start the university? I'm not sure if I get that question. Did you mean the university academic starting time?
I'll speak for the design graduate program. Is our graduate program usually starts in the fall only. We're in the midst of accepting applications now. We had a first round of applications come in December 15th, but applications are due for our program are due by April 15th. So there's still time to get that completed as well for fall admission for next fall. At the same time, we also do have people that have applied, let's say at this time last year, and they have said, well, I'm going to hold off and I'm not going to come to Minnesota until this spring. So I have one student of mine who's actually entering school for spring semester as opposed to having done it last fall. So it gets to be flexible, but the application window is open right now and it goes through April.
Okay, thank you. Let me see. I know, Simon, you have been looking into the chat. Just make sure that we are not missing any question, and so, but if anyone have any other question, again, feel free to type it into the chat so that we'll be able to address it. We have about 10 minutes left for this webinar.
Oh, there's another question in the Q&A that Brad could answer.
There's a question, how much time I need to finish this? Is it finish the whole certificate? The whole certificate is 14 weeks by itself. There are 2 terms, 7 weeks per term. But between the 2 terms, there is a 2 weeks break in between. So in total, it's 16 weeks, but the actual time you have to study and participate in classes is 14 weeks. I hope I answered the question, yeah.
There was one question in the chat also about whether this is a virtual class. Yes, it is a virtual class. I think the other thing to remember is that it's not something that's synchronous. In other words, you have to be there at an exact period of time. For almost everything we do, it's doing it any time over the course of a week. Both Deb and I and Fancy, or all 3 of us, have sessions that we meet during the weekends or over the course of the weeks. So we try to make sure that we do connect with students individually, and those are live and at a specific time. But almost all of the classwork is done at your own pace and at your own time. I want to make sure that everybody understands also that we're asking that you all comment on everybody else's work so that it becomes this learning experience for everyone.
Okay, so all right, we'll pause a minute and see if anyone else have any question. I'm glad you found it informative. Thank you.
And I'd say one of the things that I found is that it's really interesting to talk to all the people that are in the classes. And I imagine Deb has the same feeling, is that you meet these people, and all of a sudden you have people that are from all over the place, right? Students from Bangladesh and from Switzerland and Texas even. It's like, imagine that. So I think that experience of meeting with people at a distance, and we'll have with the live sessions, becomes even more important. So that I had not as many people showed up in my class last term at the last session. So it was just me and this other guy. And I thought, well, this won't take long, but we ended up talking for an hour and had this great discussion about user experience design and the design work he was doing in Texas. So it becomes a really strong educational experience for all of us.
I was going to add as well that we do a Slack channel, and Slack was new to me prior to this. So if that's something you're unfamiliar with, it's really easy way to kind of talk with your peers. And so we have a Slack channel that outside of the class time, you can ask questions to your peers. Maybe they understand something, ask them about a concept. And that's something that I look into once in a while as well, meaning I monitor it and I can answer questions that way. And then I wanted to follow up that we've then put any student that finishes their certificate into an alumni Slack chat channel. And I've found that people are posting jobs in there and they're having communication outside of when they finish the certificate, which I think that they're all really excited about having like a core group of people that they can connect with.
That's an excellent point. There's a question about job placement, and I think, Deb, you can like talk about the importance of course, is networking and building that relationship with your peers. I do want to say that I think if I recall correctly, one of you wrote a recommendation letter for a learner or for school or for job application. So again, this faculty here, they're very generous in terms of the time commitment to this certificate, I have to say. And the help, in terms of the, that's another layer. I think that they would probably willing to continue, of course, in terms of the recommendation letter, and hopefully they will helpful, when you're looking for a job or application to a school, things like that. I think that it's always helpful to have someone speak for your ability. Yeah, and also I think Coursera, even though it's an online learning platform, I have to say I think our certificate is quite hands-on, and it's by no means comparison with other schools or anything, but I do think that our faculty here, it's just based on the what we talk about so far, right? In terms of the live sections and the portfolio building, the recommendation letter, things like that. I do think that we are quite hands-on in terms of just, again, like I said earlier, we want our students to be successful. We want all of you to be successful, and take it to the level that would be that you can apply and be able to use that, in different kind of situations, work related or daily life, experience. And so, and I do think that that's something that we're proud of it. We are really, in terms of about this certificate, what we can do. I'm glad that I'm glad to see all of you here participating in this webinar, and I'm also glad that you found the information helpful. And I hope that helped you in terms of determining would you be, registering for the certificate or not. And again, feel free to reach out to us with the UX research at umn.edu if you have any question that you think of after the webinar. That always happen, I know that. So okay, with that, I think we're going to end the informational session. Thank you so much for joining us, and look forward to having you in the classes. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you.